The desert wind carried not just sand, but doubt straight to her shoulders. Lena Hawkeye Rios crouched behind the low ridge, eyes scanning the barren expanse of the training zone. The sun burned bright over miles of cracked earth and scattered rock, painting the horizon with heat shimmer. Her 338 cal sniper rifle rested against her shoulder, its matte black surface warm to the touch, scope lens catching the glare. Every granular particle of sand seemed to whisper uncertainty, and she could almost hear the unspoken challenge in the emptiness. Before we begin this mission, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because some stories of courage never made the headlines, but they deserve to be heard. Tell us where you're watching from, and who's the hero in your family. Malik Spot Adebayo adjusted the scope on his spotting rifle, a few meters away, eyes sharp, expression calm. His wiry frame leaned against the sandbags, a steady presence amid the tension. Winds holding steady at 17, shifting slightly from left to right, he said, voice low but certain. Lena nodded, absorbing the numbers as they flickered across his handheld display. Yumi Eko Tanaka crouched nearby, laptop open, fingers flying across keys as she ran calculations for elevation, drift, and range corrections. The unit gathered around as Colonel David Ironwall Trent strode into view, his tall silhouette cutting a rigid line against the morning sun. The hum of anticipation stiffened when he stopped just beyond Lena's position. He scanned the distant steel plate, then glanced at Lena, lips pressed in a thin line. "Rios," he said, voice carrying across the ridge, "let's see if you can actually hit anything beyond 2,000 meters. Don't embarrass yourself." A ripple of murmurs passed through the team. Carlos Bullseye Reyes smirked, arms crossed, clearly enjoying the setup. Lena felt a hot blush creep across her neck but forced it down. She inhaled slowly, centering herself. This was familiar territory. Public skepticism, pressure, the weight of a unit's expectation, it all hung in the desert air. Yet, for every doubt, she felt the quiet anchor of Malik's gaze. "You've got this," he said softly. It wasn't grand, it wasn't loud, but it steadied her more than the scope ever could. Lena adjusted the bipod on her rifle, legs steady against the uneven sand. She checked the zero on her scope, rarefied windage, calculated bullet drop. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythmic tapping of Yumi's keyboard. Carlos snorted. "You seriously think you can make that shot, Hawkeye? Even the hardware's laughing at you." She didn't respond, not yet. The desert stretched forward, almost endless. But she focused on the target, a small steel plate glinting under the sun, at just over 2,000 meters. She traced the line from her position to the target, imagining the flight of the bullet, the arc it would follow, the imperceptible wind shifts that could steal it from her path. She counted in her head 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 1,000 meters. Every mental step anchoring her precision. "This is Hawkeye. Range check complete," Lena murmured over the comm. Adjusting for wind, 17 left, elevation 37.8, the radio crackled in response. "Copy. Hawkeye. Spot. Ready." Malik's voice came steady. "Spot is ready." Colonel Trent shifted his weight, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Don't waste the round," he said, eyes narrowing. It wasn't just skepticism. It was a challenge issued without words. Lena inhaled again, the hot desert air burning her lungs, and let it out slowly. The rifle felt like an extension of her body now, the weight familiar, comforting, her hands unshaking despite the nerves gnawing at her. She exhaled completely, lined up the crosshairs, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil pushed lightly against her shoulder. She felt the rifle settle back into position. Malik immediately adjusted the spotting scope, calling out, "Impact confirmed, target mark within 2 meters." Nice grouping. A ripple of quiet murmurs passed through the unit. Carlos raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. Even Colonel Trent's gaze shifted, an unspoken acknowledgement flickering in his eyes. Lena didn't smile. She allowed herself only a subtle nod. There was no triumph in this first shot, only the quiet satisfaction of proving that preparation, focus, and discipline could bend doubt to precision. Yumi ran a quick readjustment, tapping new wind data into her laptop. Lena recentered the scope, recalculated for the next shot. Each action was deliberate, each movement a small testament to skill and resilience. The dessert seemed to hold its breath with her, waiting, observing, testing her resolve. The first round had landed. The colonel's words still echoed, but now they rang with a slightly different tone. The edge dulled. Malik's quiet confidence had been vindicated. The unit's dynamics subtly shifted. Respect began threading through the tension. Careful, cautious, but real. Lena exhaled again, letting the hot, dry air fill her lungs, feeling the pulse of focus steadying her from within. She adjusted her position for the next shot, scanning the horizon, calculating, preparing. The distance still stretched ahead, but the weight of doubt no longer bore solely on her shoulders. The desert wind still whispered, but now she listened to it with awareness, not fear. The stage was set, the calculations in place, and the challenge only just beginning. The next shot would push the limits further than anyone expected, and the storm of skepticism was only starting to gather. Numbers, wind, and doubt all converged in a single breath. Lena Hawkeye Rios crouched behind the low ridge, sweat dripping down her temple as the desert sun climbed higher, casting a relentless glare across the barren expanse. The target lay nearly 4 kilometers away, a tiny steel plate catching the morning light, seemingly insignificant against the vast horizon. Her 338 cal sniper rifle rested ready, bipod dug into the sand, scope aligned, every mechanical adjustment precise. Each detail mattered. One miscalculation, one overlooked gust, and the shot would vanish into the desert's endless heat shimmer. Malik Spot Adebayo squatted beside her, the small tablet in his hands tracking wind shifts and mirage patterns. His wiry frame radiated calm, even as the sun scorched the exposed ridge. "Heat mirage is increasing," he said quietly. "Refraction's playing tricks at 2,500 meters. We'll need to adjust elevation by 0.3 mils if we want a clean shot at 3-2-0-0. Lena nodded, absorbing the numbers, running them through her mind, translating data into muscle memory. Yumi Eko Tanaka hunched over her laptop, feeding in humidity, barometric pressure, and wind vectors. Fingers flew across the keys, calculations streaming in real time. Elevation 37.5, wind 17 left, target speed 0, she reported. Lena adjusted the scope turret slowly, deliberately, ensuring each micro-adjustment aligned with Yumi's readouts. Carlos Bullseye Reyes leaned back on his heels, smirking, arms crossed. "You're really trying for 3-8-0-0 meters in this heat." His voice was loud enough for the whole ridge to hear. "Even the Mirage knows you'll miss." Lena did not respond. She had learned long ago that reactions were optional. Focus was not. Colonel David Ironwall Trent approached, boots crunching over sand, eyes narrowing at the distant steel plate. "One trial shot," he barked. "Show me you're not wasting the team's rounds. You have 10 minutes. Hit it or step aside." His tone was final, leaving no room for negotiation. Lena's jaw tightened, heat prickling along her neck, but she exhaled slowly. Confidence wasn't loud, it was steady. She whispered over the radio, "This is Hawkeye, preparing for trial. Elevation 37.5, wind 17 left." Malek's voice crackled back immediately. "Spot ready. Target confirmed." Lena settled into position, the rifle feeling heavier than it had that morning, but familiar in every way that mattered. Her breathing slowed. Focus sharpened. The desert's heat seemed to fold into a distant hum, every distraction fading except the target, the trajectory, and the faint numbers flowing across Yumi's screen. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked a controlled pulse, almost rhythmically. Malek's eyes tracked the shot. Adjustments made instantly. Impact confirmed, 3200 meters. Clean hit. The word clean hung in the air, heavier than any applause, yet lighter than expectation. Lena's eyes lifted slowly from the scope, watching as the team processed the distance and precision of her round. Carlos blinked, eyebrows rising, a flicker of respect breaking through his derision. Colonel Trent's eyes narrowed, a subtle shift of acknowledgement passing over his face, though his posture remained rigid. Lena felt the weight of doubt loosening, a small, almost imperceptible easing of tension across the unit. Malek grinned faintly, pride softening the edges of his usually stoic face. The desert remained unrelenting. The sun climbed further, shadows shortening. Lena adjusted the rifle again, considering the variables for the next shot. She noted the heat shimmer growing stronger, the wind gusting slightly from the southwest. The trial had worked. Her calculations, her adjustments, her focus all validated. Confidence, previously a whisper under doubt, now hummed louder. But the desert had its own rhythm. The air shifted abruptly, carrying fine particles that stung eyes and coated exposed skin. A distant wall of sand began to rise, pushed by a gust that grew faster, more aggressive. Yumi's voice broke through Lena's focus. "Sandstorm incoming, visibility dropping. Time on next shot is critical." Malek adjusted the spotting scope quickly. "We have a window of maybe 2 minutes before gusts reach us fully. After that, target could be obscured entirely. Elevation correction remains, but wind is fluctuating now." Lena's hands moved over the scope with practiced precision, heart steady despite the sudden change. The tension ratcheted higher. Every calculation now carried more risk, every decision more weight. Colonel Trent did not speak. He observed silently, stance rigid, jaw tight. The quiet acknowledgement of Lena's prior success hung in the air, but unspoken. Carlos muttered under his breath, "I can't believe that worked," his tone begrudging, reluctant, but real. Lena allowed a fleeting smirk, but immediately returned to calculations. There was no room for satisfaction, not yet. The storm and the extended range demanded full attention. Lena exhaled and whispered over the comm, "This is Hawkeye, ready for extended." Malek's response was instant, calm, precise. "Spot ready, target confirmed." Wind holding at 16 left, Yumi adjusted her data one last time, nodding toward Lena, silent encouragement clear in her eyes. The ridge, the team, the desert itself seemed to pause, every element aligned for the moment to come. The first success had shattered some doubt, but the real challenge loomed ahead, farther and more precise than anyone had yet attempted. The next shot would push Lena beyond her limits, and every calculation, every breath. Every measure of trust between spotter and shooter would be tested like never before. At 3,800 meters, a single pull of the trigger could silence every doubt. Lena Hawkeye Rios lay prone on the ridge, her rifle leveled across the barren desert that stretched beyond the horizon. The sun had climbed high, painting the landscape in harsh gold and deep shadows. Heat shimmer danced across the sand, distorting the tiny steel plate target almost 4 kilometers away. Her pulse was steady, but every nerve hummed with anticipation. Every calculation, every adjustment, every breath brought her closer to the impossible. Malik Spot Adebayo crouched beside her, hands gripping the spotting scope with just enough tension to betray his own nerves. His eyes tracked the distant target, scanning for mirage, wind, and subtle movements in the sand. "Hawkeye," he whispered, voice tight with concentration, wind holding at 17 left. Elevation 38.6. Humidity at 0.9. "Ready when you are." Lena nodded, feeling the familiar rhythm of preparation settle over her. Colonel David Ironwall Trent stood silently a few meters behind, tall and imposing, arms crossed. He did not speak. His eyes followed the ridgeline, watching the distance, the conditions, and the young sniper whose skill he had quietly begun to respect. His jaw was tight, pride warring with astonishment as he considered the improbability of what she was about to attempt. Carlos Bullseye Reyes muttered under his breath, shifting weight from one foot to the other, the edge of disbelief softening into cautious respect. Yumi Ekatanaka crouched nearby, laptop open, eyes scanning environmental readouts, ready to call out any last adjustments. The team had gone silent, all attention fixed on the distant plate and the sniper who held the key to this moment. Lena exhaled, letting the heat of the desert fill her lungs, steadying the rifle against her shoulder. She adjusted the bipod one last time, crosshairs settling exactly on the target. "This is Hawkeye. Firing on your mark Spot," she said calmly. Malik's voice responded immediately. Spot confirmed, target in sight. The rifle's trigger gave under her finger. The .338 LM round leaped forward, leaving a faint arc in her mind before reality could catch it. She watched the mirage distort around the trajectory as the bullet carried through the air almost weightless, a single line of intent between her and the steel plate. 4 kilometers of desert stretched beneath it, nothing to guide it but calculations, skill, and trust. Malik froze, eyes wide as the distant plate awaited impact. Time seemed to stretch, every second magnified in the intensity of observation. The wind whispered across the sand, carrying the round's final approach until the bullet struck the steel plate dead center. The small impact sent a shock through the ground that only those nearest could perceive. Malik's hands loosened on the scope, and a quiet, stunned awe settled over him. The unit erupted, some shouting, some clapping, but all eyes turned toward Lena. She remained prone, still aligned with her rifle, chest rising and falling steadily, taking in the moment with measured pride. Colonel Trent's eyes narrowed, then softened in grudging acknowledgment. He stepped forward slowly and nodded once, sharp and deliberate, the first wordless recognition of her skill and precision. Carlos let out a low whistle, incredulous. I didn't think she had it in her," he muttered, tone mixed with astonishment and respect. Yumi smiled faintly, relief and admiration clear in her expression, hands hovering over her laptop as though touching it might extend the moment. Malik finally allowed himself a small, proud grin, voice catching as he said, "Hawkeye." You just made history for this ridge. Lena exhaled fully, lowering the rifle carefully. The desert's heat, the wind, the 4-kilometer stretch of sand and stone, all of it, had conspired against her. Yet every calculation, every adjustment, every ounce of focus had brought her here. Her heart still raced, but her mind was clear. Triumph was quiet, earned, and it settled over her like a second skin. The team gathered closer, voices rising in celebration, but Lena's eyes remained on the target. The impossible shot had landed, and in that silence that followed, every ounce of doubt evaporated. Colonel Trent finally spoke, voice low but firm. "Well done. Rios, that's a shot few could even imagine, let alone execute." Lena allowed herself a faint nod, feeling the weight of respect that no words could fully measure. The ridge seemed smaller now, the desert vast, yet conquered in that single moment of precision. The bond between sniper and spotter, the unity of the team, and the recognition from command coalesced into a quiet, triumphant heartbeat that pulsed through every member present. Lena lowered her scope, letting the sun reflect off the steel plate one last time, absorbing the magnitude of what had been achieved. She stood slowly, feeling the desert heat against her skin and the rush of adrenaline fading into calm satisfaction. Knowing the next challenge would always be waiting, but this victory, this precision, would remain hers and the team's forever. The long road of calculations and trust had led to this shot, and the final challenge would push them all further than anyone had dared to imagine.